All right, Shalawam, I came out there. First and foremost, before I start, I want to give all praises to Yahawah, baha, Yahawashi. Yahawah, that's the name of the Heavenly Father, who the world ignorantly calls God, the God of the Negro, Latino, and Native American men, all right, which make up the 12 tribes of Israel. Yahawashi, that's the name of his beloved Son, who the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ. The bronze to the apostles, a great millstone, and peace and mercy to elect, by Shem HaRakakwadash, the name of the Holy Spirit. You Edomite white people have to pay for the middle passage. All right. Now, what is the middle passage? If you don't know what the middle passage is, you're going to find out what it is today, through this lesson. You're also going to find out how dreadful, painful, sadistic, evil, wicked, and why would a person do such a thing going to cross past your mind, Why would a person do such a thing? It's going to cross past your mind when dealing with the middle passage, man. Now, during the genesis of our slavery under the so-called the so-called white man Edomite, they created a system called the triangle trade. Now, the triangle trade was a system of going from Europe down to Africa, from Africa back over to the New World, the Americas, and then from the Americas back up to Europe. Now, what the Edomite white people would do, they would come from Portugal, Spain, France, Britain, with ships. One of the ships that's famously known is the Amistad. All right, with these different type of ships. And they will go from Europe down to Africa and round up the Israelites that was on the west coast of Africa. Now, the Africans and the Arabs would help assist the white people, the Edomites that came from Europe, in rounding up the Israelites, the Negroes, the Haitians, and West Indians. All right, because we're not Africans. So you may hear the term blacks sold blacks into slavery. That's not true. Africans sold Israelites into slavery. All right. So they would go down to the west coast of Africa, round us up there. And then we had to go through the middle passage. When you were going from the west coast of Africa to the Americas was called the middle passage. And during the middle passage, that's where the most sadistic, cruelest, diabolical things happen to us, man, by the hands of the Edomites, the so-called white man. And they don't teach you about this in school. Man. These are things you have to search on your own. All right. So during this middle passage, man, it just brings sorrow to your spirit. All right. So I found this in the Britannica. All right. Now, this is from the Britannica on the middle passage. It says, the forced voyage of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it says Africans, but we're Israelites, man. We're not Africans, so I'm going to use African. Slaki, I'm going to use Israelites there. The forced voyage of enslaved Israelites across the Atlantic Ocean. And we all know the Atlantic Ocean is the coldest out of all the oceans, man. The movie The Titanic shows you that. All right. It says, to the New World. It was a one leg of a triangle trade route that took goods such as knives, guns, ammunition, cotton, cloth, tools, and brass dishes from Europe to Africa. Israelites to work as slaves in the Americas and West Indies, and items, mostly raw materials produced on the plantation, sugar, rice, tobacco, indigo, rum, and cotton, back to Europe. See? So we were being shipped and sold for inanimate objects, man. It shows you the greed that the so-called white man, the Edomite man, has for materialistic things. He's seen a human being with emotions, and he disregarded their sorrow, pain, because he wanted something that was inanimate, such as sugar, rice, tobacco, indigo, rum, and cotton, man. You know, it shows you the so-called white man he hates the Negro, Latino, Native American man. It says from about 1518 to the mid 19th centuries, millions of Israelite men, women, and children made the 21 to 90-day voyage aboard grossly overcrowded sailing ship manned by crews mostly from Great Britain, the Netherlands, Portugal, and France, all Edomites. A 21 to 90-day voyage, up to 3 months on this middle passage. All right, so let's jump this in Joel chapter 3 verse 3. It says, and they have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot and a girl for wine that they might drink. So the scriptures is on point on what happened in histories, man. Joel chapter 3 verse I'm sorry, I just seen it. Verse 6. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians that you might remove them far from their border. All right. The children of Judah was talking about the Negro, the Haitian, and West Indian man. Have you sold unto the Grecians, the so-called white man? The Edomites, the white man were the Greeks. That was the Greeks. That you might remove them far from their borders. All right, so check this out. Because during the middle passage, they couldn't just sail with, whatever slaves they caught for that day. They had to have up to like 150 to 600 slaves before they would make the trip to make it worth the money. So when we would wait, when we got captured, we got put in temporary jails until they got the numbers they needed before they shipped us out. Now, on these things, you had Edomites who was already buying us and having us already, whatever they was going to do with us, splitting us up from our families. But check this story out where I found on this documentary by Steven Spielberg, what it says. Let's see what it's talking about.
While I was with his enemies in the camp, I saw a child of about 18 months old cast out of the camp because the child was so young that nobody would buy him. That poor orphan was there crying at the point of death for about 2 days, and none took pity to pick him up. Joseph Wright, former African captive.
They would split you up from your family, however they was going to divide you, whether you was going to go to South America, Central, or North America, or the islands, wherever they was going to ship you at, before they shipped you, wherever you was going to go, they already had you sold to wherever ship you was going to go in. So if your family got sold differently, you got split up. But this very particular baby right here, this baby got split from his family, but the baby was told it was 18 months. None of the Edomites want to buy the baby. So the baby would cry right there for 2 days to the point of death, man. Nobody pitying them or nothing. And it's bad enough when you hear a baby cry, it's like, oh shit, somebody get that baby, You feel a sense of sorrow because the baby is helpless. But the so-called white man, the Edomite, nope. He has no pity. He has no soul, man. This dude is dark inside, That's the Edomite white man for you. And he has to pay for it, man. Amos chapter 1 verse 11. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, the so-called white man, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother, us Israelites, with the sword, and did cast off all pity. For him to treat, the so-called white man likes to use children to fulfill his agenda. Oh, the children, it's about the children. What will happen with the children? But look what he used to do to our children and what he's still doing to them to this very day, man. This so-called white man has cast off all pity. And his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. That's how the so-called white man came at us, man. You know? So let's go jump a little further in this. Let's jump to the 24 mark. Jump to the 24 mark real quick. Before we do that, though, let's read a little more in this Britannica. All right, it says slave captains anchored chiefly off the Guyana coast, also called the Slave Coast. The west coast of Africa gained the name called the Slave Coast due to the Europeans doing what they did to the Negroes. All right. It says for a month to a year to trade for their cargoes of 150 to 600 persons. One day you out there, you going fishing with your father showing you how to fish, so that when you get a family, you grow older, you know how to sustain your family, and you get kidnapped. You get kidnapped. You know, your whole village get burnt down. You know? By this Edomite white man who had no reason to come do that to you but for him to gain money, man. When it comes to money, the so-called white man, he don't give a fuck. He'll sell his mama, he'll sell his fucking daddy, man. It says most of whom had been kidnapped and forced to march to the coast under wretched conditions, whether it was rain, snow, windy, it don't matter. You walked off the west coast of Africa to get to those temporary spots until you got shipped off, man. And you was kidnapped and forced. It says, while at anchor and after departure from Africa, those aboarded ship were exposed to almost continuous dangers, including raids at the port by hostile tribes. Whatever was going on, man, we basically, the so-called white man, he put us in harm's way just overall, period, man. You know? You know, it says whether a war of the tribes was there, epidemics, attacked by pirates or enemy ships. You know, some pirates want to jack Esau. We was right in the middle of it, you know. And bad weather. You know, whether the Most High wanted to have a day where, you know, the weather was all jacked up, we had to deal with that under the hands of the Edomite. It says, although those events affected the ship, crews, as well as enslaved, they were more devastating to the latter group, who had also to cope with physical, sexual, and psychological abuse by the hands of their captors. That's what we dealt with you so-called white people, man. We dealt with physical, sexual, and psychological abuse from you. Let's jump to the 24 mark.
Ahmed.
Disease was a relentless killer. Dysentery, smallpox, measles, and scurvy consumed the ships.
The floor of their rooms was so covered with blood and mucus that it resembled a slaughterhouse. Alexander Falconbridge, slave ship surgeon.
If indeed someone got sick with smallpox, which was incurable at the time, you simply tossed the person over. And if you suspected that it spread to others, you tossed these people over.
Abundance of these poor creatures are lost on board ships merely through the surgeon's ignorance, because he knows not what they are afflicted with, but supposing it to be a fever, bleeds and purges or vomits them, and so casts them into an incurable diarrhea.
So, these ship surgeons will get sick because they had us laying, like he said, it was filled with blood and mucus down there. They had us laying in feces. You pee, dookie, baby dookie. Everybody just, women on their cycle. It just created disease down there. These surgeons, these Edomite surgeons on the boat will go down there and see something wrong with you. And his ass, with his demonic ass, he didn't know what the hell was wrong with you. So their best conclusion, throw you over the ship.
And in a few days, they become a feast for some hungry shark. Dr. T. Aubrey, slave ship surgeon.
During the Atlantic slave trade, the population and migratory practices of the Atlantic sharks changed dramatically. Sharks followed the slave ships for hundreds of miles across the Atlantic and the Caribbean.
So they was throwing us overboard so dramatically that the Atlantic sharks changed their routes up to 100 miles, just feasting on our bodies, man. Feasting on our bodies, man. All by the hands of who? The Edomite white man. You know? All by your hands. All right? Joel 3:3. Excuse me. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what have I to do with thee, or Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine, which the Hamites, the Africans, helped you? Will you render me a recompense? If you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head. You're going to get paid back for what you did, you Hamites, you Arabs, especially you so-called white people. Because it says, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried it into your temple, and my goodly things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold to the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hands of the children of Judah, and ye shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it. So you so-called white people, you're getting everything that you've reaped. You're finna everything you sowed, you're finna reap it, man. All right, we finna sell your sons and your daughters through the Spirit of the Lord, because what you have did. All right, you changed the routes of the sharks, man. Sharks is going to places they never even been, because you was tossing our body over at such a high rate. You know, matter of fact, there's a picture. Slaves underwater holding hands picture. There's I forgot what oh, there it go perfectly. Underwater sculpture in honor of us, man, of Israelites. This is a real, that's like this right here is a monument. Look at that, man. That's how much they was throwing us over. Now it's a monument. It became a monument, man. Wow, man. This so-called white man gotta pay, man. All right. It says, although these events affected the ships back in Britannica. Oh, you know what? I was already done with that. It says, despite or perhaps in part. You know what? Let me jump down. I'm gonna jump down a little bit. It says, I'm gonna jump down a little bit. It says, in the daytime, weather permitting, slaves, in the daytime, weather permitting, slaves were brought on the deck to exercise or for dancing, jumping up and down. All right, so they forced us to exercise and to dance. At this time, some captains insisted that the sleeping quarters be scrapped and swallowed by the crew. In bad weather, the oppressive heat and noxious fumes and the ventilated and insanitary holds cause fevers and dysentery. Let's see what that is, man. Infectious disease and inflammation in intestines, diarrhea. It caused diarrhea. It caused fevers. Our holding quarters with a high morality. So it says deaths during the Middle Passage caused by epidemic, suicide. We was committing suicide, you know. On the movie, I'm gonna start to show you the girl. She sneaked to the side and just fall over with her baby in her hand, man. She falls over the side with her baby in her hand, like, you know, fuck it. You know, we was laying in diarrhea. Oh man, so-called white man gotta pay. All right. So let's jump to the 39:30 mark. Let's see what it's talking about.
Included Africans. The price of slaves fluctuated. In 1754, George Washington bought a male slave for $260. When he went to the market 10 years later, he paid $285.
So we was fluctuating with these devils. We was becoming more pricier as time went on, you know? And you see him, the beloved George Washington was one of the men buying slaves. Now, I want to bring out, they had companies going of selling us, man. Now, they had one of the companies called the Royal African Slave Company. Yep, that's it right there. The Royal African Slave Company. This is one of the companies they had established was selling us. The Royal African Company was an English mercantile trading company set up by the Stuart family in the city of London, Edomites, merchants to trade slaves along the west coast of Africa. It was led by Duke of York, who was the brother of Charles II and later took the throne of James II. See? So they had companies going. And this nigga George Washington was one of them motherfuckers benefiting.
Slaves were sold for small down payments and on reasonable terms. There was also a mail order business. By the mid-19th century, the top price paid for healthy slaves exceeded $2,000.
I own I am shocked at the purchase of...
Check out this poem by William Cooper.
Mail order business. By the mid-19th century, the top price paid for healthy slaves exceeded $2,000.
I own I am shocked at the purchase of slaves, and fear those who buy them and sell them are knaves. What I hear of their hardships, their tortures and groans, is almost enough to draw pity from stones.
You heard what he said? He said, what I hear of their hardships, their tortures, and groans is almost pity enough to draw it's almost enough to draw pity from stones. He said what we went through, our groans, our pain, what the Edomites seen of us. He said you could draw pity out of a stone, an inanimate object, something that ain't living. You could get that stone to cry. He was speaking. You know? It shows you this so-called white man did not care. He did not care. This is Ezekiel 25:12. Thus saith the Lord power, because that Edom have dwelt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and have greatly offended and revenged itself upon them. Thus saith the Lord power, I will also stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and will make it desolate from Teman, and the day of Dedan shall fall by the sword. And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they should do in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury, and they should know my vengeance, saith the Lord power. So we're going to get you back. You had, like I said, you took vengeance on us. This is Ezekiel 35:5. It says, because thou hast had perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, and in the time of their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood. You so-called white people, prepare to see your blood. And blood shall pursue you. Blood shall pursue thee, which the thee is you talking about you so-called white people. You next. It says, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee.
I pity them greatly, but I must be mum, for how could we do without sugar and rum?
See? He said, I pity them greatly, but I must be mum, for how shall we do without sugar and rum? William Cooper. He basically said sugar and rum was more important than us. That's the so-called white man's mind frame. All right?
William Cooper, 18th century poet.
The Atlantic slave trade accelerated the development of colonial America. Africans brought advanced farming techniques such as complex irrigation systems that made the cultivation of crops possible.
So we built America, it just said. We colonized America through slave forcement. And you so-called white people, you're going to pay for it next. All right? Matter of fact, let's see if we can find the scene real quick. And let's give you some of the visuals.
Dios te bendice, hija. Dios te bendice. Dios os perdona y os ama a todos. Ala, ala, que Dios os perdona.
There you go, man. Shalom Akim step. The Edomite white man will have to pay for the middle passage. Shalom.